A new comment from the President of the United States, Donald Trump, Kimberly, and he says this: today's terror suspect entered our country through extended family chain migration, which is incompatible with national security, and he calls for Congress to end chain migration and says that someone like this, convicted, should face the death penalty. What are your thoughts on today's events?
You know, I think it's powerful in terms of the comments from the president, but this is very consistent with what he has been talking about, you know, previously, saying that he was against chain migration. And when you see a situation like this, it's difficult to vet. This individual, in fact, was able to come in from an uncle, then through his mother, and be able to get in just prior, a couple months prior to his 21st birthday. And had he turned 21, then he wouldn't have been able to. So quite interesting, because you can see the loopholes in the law that the president and others are eager to close. And a situation like this where he's radicalized online, I mean, I really think that they should make even a larger push to shut down some of these radicalized sites that are really having such a powerful impact on people like this individual that come here to do harm, you know, to us. And it just takes one person with a pipe bomb, something like that. Okay, he wasn't very good at it. He injured himself. Not enough, obviously. He should have, you know, imposed a death penalty on himself right then and there. But thank God more people, you know, weren't injured or hurt. But it just goes to show you the complexity of the problem in combating terror in highly dense, or, you know, urban areas like this, in cities where you have a large population, a lot of people, and a potential for great numbers of, you know, harm in terms of fatalities, et cetera, because we live in such like densely packed communities.
Yeah, and I think Port Authority is the largest bus terminal in the United States. We just heard from President Trump. We also heard from Governor Cuomo and Mayor de Blasio. Dana, how do you think the local leadership handled the incident today?
Well, I think we're going to be finding out more about the two police officers. They were Port Authority police officers that were right on the scene immediately. Thankfully, there were only the 5 mild injuries that were reported, and a lot of it is ringing in the ears, which is consistent with this type of thing. But one of the things I think to point out, remember the truck attack a month ago. Then you have this. Anytime you have one of these incidents, look at how many resources we have to have in order to deal with any one of these events. It could be just this minor event, relatively minor for, thankfully, for there were no other casualties. But we are spending a lot to train our emergency medical personnel, our law enforcement, our intelligence. We have made a really big commitment. And then in the B block, Greg is going to talk a little bit more about the ideology and going forward, because there are things you can do to harden your defenses, and even some of these are soft targets. You can try to harden them, but what we really have to do is deal with the generational war that we are in, and we are on a war footing. And the other thing President Trump points out, not just about the chain migration, is I don't think I've ever heard him talk about the death penalty before. There was no other casualty here except for this guy, this individual getting himself injured. To call for the possibility of the death penalty in a case like that, that is certainly different. And I don't know if he's going to push forward on that, but it's something that might be more of a deterrent going forward.
Yeah, I hadn't heard of that either. Greg, to Dana's point that you know, we've seen spectacular coordinated attacks, you know, right after 9/11 and obviously 9/11. And now we're seeing more crude and rudimentary attacks with just kind of, they like to say, lone wolves, but ISIS-inspired individuals. Those are very hard to prevent.
Well, you can't get a better, this is like the best you could hope for when a murderous D-bag has his own plan blow up in his ass. I mean, this is it's something like, it's interesting how ISIS isn't taking credit for this one. They're just like, you know, he's not ours.
They're all jihad fail. Disavow him.
But that's the funny part. But the unfunny part about it is, you know, the mayor says, thank God that few were hurt. But it wasn't God. It was incompetence. Right. And the only reason why dozens didn't die was a failure in explosives. The intent is the same. It's just that the outcome, it's not divine intervention. It's that the guy wasn't very good at it. That should not make you feel good.
No.
Because that means we didn't stop it. We did. He still could have done it. So we should be happy that no one died. That's great. But what happens is because the attack fails, it has so little effect because we immediately go on to do something else. We don't think about it. We almost think as though it's been foiled.
Right.
When in factually, it was lucky. Right.
False,
it was failure.
False sense of security is what it produces.
Yeah.
All right, Juan, what do you think about today's events and how to move forward and prevent things like that from happening in New York City?
Well, I mean, you know, unlike Greg, I think thank God, because I do think
Well, I
it
did
was
say
incompetence.
I said it's good, but it's not God that stopped it. It was
No.
incompetence.
I'm just grateful that more people. Really, what we're talking about here are minor injuries, except for the guy who apparently damaged himself, his hand and his abdomen, right? Mm-hmm. But what I notice is in these situations, no contact with ISIS, although apparently he was ISIS-inspired.
Right.
And similarly, when I think back to the guy who ran his truck down the bike path here, I think late October, again, no direct contact, no coordination, but ISIS-inspired, right? So even as we can defeat ISIS, what we see is the ideology remaining something that is like a cancer. It's just out there, especially on the internet. And this guy's 27. I disagree strongly with President Trump. I think family reunification is really great for America. I think families are so important, especially in immigrants, because I think they act as a check.
Precisely. That's why the whole thing is, if chain migration is okay one way, it should be okay both ways. Right. If they arrive in a chain and one person in that chain does something, leave in a chain, the potential for leaving in a chain might cause the family to pay more attention to the oddball in their family.
It's just like the way that unions used to give out cards. If you're somebody's cousin or brother or son, you're more likely to get a union card because they know that that other person, the senior person, is going to be watching you. You don't need a boss. You got somebody who's going to say to you, you better act right. You're representing the family.
So you're comparing unions to terrorists?
No, but what I'm saying is
going to be the headline on the internet.
I'm sure.
It's an analogy.
But I think that what you're seeing is here, I mean, this is one guy, 27 years old. Apparently, now the motive as we understand it is he said something to the effect of the United States is bombing my country and I think I should do some damage here. Well, how ridiculous is this?
No one is bombing Bangladesh.
That's what I'm just saying. That's what exactly
except,
what I thought.
Except
Who is bombing Bangladesh? I'm glad you said that, Jesse, because to me it was like a puzzle. There's something going on I haven't heard about. But again, so he's some kind of nut.
Again, like technically he's incompetent, and then philosophically he's incompetent as well.
Right.
I want to address something you said quickly though, because you mentioned chain migration.
Yeah.
I don't think the president wants to make sure that families aren't unified when they come over here. I think the point is you don't want chain migration to make up 70% of all the foreign nationals that come legally into this country, which it is now. Kimberly, I think the president wants to have an immigration system based on merit, which when they look at education, language skills, how good they are with their hands, how smart they are, things like that, that needs to take a higher priority than if your uncle knows somebody.
Right, just make it more of a meritocracy, and also then it allows it to be more properly and thoroughly vetted in terms of what kind of contributions can you provide here to this country. We have a lot to offer you, so why shouldn't there be some reciprocity, and with that, thorough vetting. I'm all for it. When you see a situation like this today, it really does strengthen the argument that the president is trying to make, and you see that he's really had enough. Like Dana said, that he's gone out on a very, far limb to say this could be a death penalty offense, despite the fact that there wasn't an actual loss of life. That's, that's
just
very
you got to watch,
unprecedented.
That's one of the things that he does in a statement like this. He'll throw a little chum out there in the water where some of us will be like, oh, I could see that. That will definitely lead the news. And it will be much more about President Trump than calling for the death penalty for him rather than about the actual terrorists.
So I just wanted to make the point. The point I wanted to make to you earlier was, with regard to chain migration, this guy didn't come over here to do this. I think he came over here and then got this idea in his head. So this is like
and that's not unusual, actually, if you look at several of the
Correct. I was about to make that
point,
that so many of the people who perpetrate these horrific, hard acts, in fact, are Americans who have gotten the idea over the internet.
Well, it's very hard to pinpoint exactly when someone was radicalized.
Well, that's the point. We don't have evidence of that yet, so I'd rather wait for a forensic examination of all of his computers and his background and his life to see at what point he had contacts and at what point he became radicalized. Sure, some of it on the internet, but we don't know who he's been in contact with.
We're probably going to know more about this guy than the Las Vegas shooter in about 48 hours.
Well, and you know why? And this is the unsung inanimate hero here is surveillance. We know a lot because we saw it.
Yep.
We saw it. We need more cameras. If the only way to preserve freedom is more security, I know people hate this.
It's also the reason why people
the
Congress will take up before the end of the year the reauthorization of the 702 program, which is part of the FISA program, which talks about collection and what's allowed. And the president wants it reauthorized. There's going to be a fight about it, but I think he has the upper hand.